Hello, everyone. This is Leilani Cawthon, the CEO and publisher at the Learning Council News Media and Research Organization. We're going to get started today with the digital transition discussion for Illinois and Wisconsin. We're excited to have with us Dr. PJ Caposey, Superintendent of Meridian CUSD 223. I want to make sure I can hear you, Dr. Caposey.
Test, test, test. Good morning, everyone.
Yeah, good morning. It's exciting to have you. Okay, so I want to just do a little bit of intro here for everyone that's attending and let them know you can take a break anytime. Just keep your browser tab open for the event and come back. Also, there's a little symbol that looks like a hand next to your name, and you can raise your hand at any time and we'll call on you, interrupting when it's appropriate for the speaker or ask questions at the end. You can also type in questions at any time and that'll let us know to unmute you and have you come on or just ask the question that you typed in. So that's where we're at right now. And we want to thank our sponsors for the day. We have ST Math, ClassLink, CommScope Ruckus, Stay Mobile, Scribble, D2L, My Blueprint, Blackboard, Promethean, Scholastic Digital Solutions, new product Mosaic by ACT, Safari Montage, and No Story. So again, we're going to get started with Dr. Caposey. Dr. Caposey, I'm going to hand you presentation status. I know you have a presentation, and you're going to be talking about let's not waste a good crisis and inspiring us.
I'm going to try.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to make you presenter. 3, 2, 1. Okay, you have presenter status. So go ahead. Okay, we see your screen. Yep, we see your slide deck.
Beautiful. Thank you so
Perfect.
much.
Perfect.
All right.
Okay.
That was about as smooth as a transition as I've had in about 100 of these virtual online presentations so far. So congratulations to us, I think.
Yay, yay.
Good morning, everyone. What I want to talk to you about today is a little bit about the evolution of education and how we can go about trying to not waste a good crisis. It's a quote often attributed to Chicagoan Rahm Emanuel. And so whether you like him or his politics or not, it's a heck of a quote. And what we find ourselves in right now is, for lack of a better term, a heck of a crisis. And so for us, I think we have significant opportunity and significant challenge in front of us. And if you ask, I think most educators on a given day, some days they see this as an incredible opportunity and challenge. And on other days, they see it as this incredible obstacle that they can't quite overcome. So in my 20 minutes or so more with you today, my hope is just to outline a handful of questions that I hope you're asking yourselves as we continue to progress through this meandering school year, which is, FY21. So hopefully I'm able to provide some, if I do my job well today, I just make you think. So like when you're driving home today, or you're in the shower, or you're on your run, or whatever it is that you do, hopefully I just push your thinking a little bit so that you consider things in a different light. I'm not going to provide any simple solution or step for you to take the next day. We're going to be at the large macro abstract level. So tell you a little bit about myself before I get started. I am the superintendent of schools for Meridian 223 in the northwest part of the state. For those of you familiar with Illinois, you know we are one of the states with an intense amount of districts. So we have 850 plus districts, and for whatever reason, there are 3 meridians. We are the meridian in the northwest corner, Meridian 223. This is my 8th year in the position. Prior to that, I taught in our neighboring district. I was a principal in our neighboring district for 4 years, and the entirety of my teaching and assistant principal experience was either in the inner city of Chicago or in Rockford Public Schools. The rest of the information on this screen is largely contextual. So I write books, I get the opportunity to go and speak, but more importantly, you have my contact information. So on just about every social media platform, you can find me at MCUSD or my name, just simply PJ Caposey. You also see my cell phone number and my email address. So if I say anything brilliant or insane or questionable, feel free to stay in touch with me so that we can continue the dialogue. So I want to share my quick story because I think it's indicative of what most people are working through right now. When we got word on March 13th or I should say on March 13th, when it became very evident to the entire world that life as we know it would be changing significantly. That was the day that Rudy Gobert tested positive in the NBA shutdown. That's when Tom Hanks was confirmed positive, and it became very clear that this was very real and going to impact us on a multitude of levels. I went into complete crisis management mode. I had my district pretty well prepared, as given all things, to make this robust and massive shift from traditional in-person education to remote learning. And we worked really hard over the next 5 days to get us rolling. And I was really proud of what we did. And when we were done with that, so at the end of March, I went into complete panic mode and I was completely paralyzed. So those of you that know me that are on the call know this. I suffer from a great deal of health anxiety. I'm a 3-time cancer survivor. And so once the pandemic started to sit in, and the week before everything kind of shut down, I was on 8 planes and at several different conferences. I was under this enormous load of stress and dread. And eventually somebody had a really meaningful conversation with me and pulled me from where I was at that moment. And from that time forward, so from April forward, I've been ready to go. I've been ready to drive and ready to act. And what I have found is that same struggle that I had is similar to what other people are finding, except it's just not predictable and not in a cyclical manner. So as school leaders or as educators, I think we've all come to realize, like, February is a tough month. Like, we have to do what we can to inspire and to improve morale and to motivate during that time. What I have found in this age of COVID is that one day I'll talk to somebody and they're upbeat and they're driving and they're ready to make changes and they're looking at this as an opportunity, and the next day they are at rock bottom. And so the reason I share this is because wherever you are at on your journey through this right now, I just want to be somebody to say it's okay to be exactly where you're at. But if you're at a place where you don't like being, or that's unhealthy or unproductive, it's okay to feel that way right now. It's just not okay to let yourself stay there. And as leaders, as we are supporting other people, I think that is incumbent upon us as well to understand that part of our job is to be empathetic and supportive and nurturing, and the other part of our job is to paint a clear and ambitious vision of the future and to help support people on their journey forward. And I think that right now we're all in this really complicated leadership calculus of figuring out when to drive and when to support and how we can connect those two things. And so I just think that any presentation that is given during this time, it is imperative to start off by just kind of addressing that, particularly a presentation that focuses on making sure that we don't waste a good crisis. So I'm going to ask that you guys use your chat function at this point. And I want you to pretend that we are exactly 1 year ago today. And if I would have asked you a year ago today, if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about schools, what would it be? So I'll give you guys a couple of minutes and I'll let you guys type in to the chat so that people can see your response. Great. So as these answers continue to come in, the reason I pose this question is simple, because I want you to consider where you wanted schools to go a year ago today compared to where they are right now and where you want them to be a year from today. So what I'm finding is that the more that I conduct or facilitate this conversation, the more things have changed, but the more that they really have stayed the same. And so that is what has prompted me to talk about, like, let's not waste this. Like, we have this opportunity to evolve, right? Like, so what happens when anything evolves is that it identifies the parts of that's central to its identity and experience that are necessary to persist, and they retain those. The things that are unnecessary, they shed, and the things that they are necessary to be successful in the future, they adapt toward. And so when we talk about evolution, I think it's important to set that context out, because it's both about change and it's about loss. It's about what we are going to stop doing in order to do things differently in the future. And I think that as we look at what this crisis has done for us, it has done both. It has painted a very clear picture of what we should be doing in the future, but it also has painted a very clear picture of what perhaps we could stop doing in the present. So I think I would encourage all of us to continue to be mindful of that context as we move forward.
Hey, Dr. Caposey. So here's some of the comments. I don't know if you're checking the questions panel, but it's one is more active interactive learning, and another is equity in the quality of students' learning experiences, and another is reach and teach all students on a very really individualized and personalized level. And then I put in real personalized learning. So pretty much all of them, there's so far the same, except for the one about equity.
Right, and so, which I think is another thing that I probably could have brought forward a little bit more, and probably should have brought forward a little bit more when I was discussing the stress that everyone's under at this point. When we throw in the stress of the pandemic on top of the stress of the election, which is polarizing at minimum, and then on top of the social justice movement and the stress that brings on to us and the people that we serve, I don't know that there has been a more high stress environment. So I think that is a well-placed comment. So the hope for me throughout the remainder of the 15 minutes that we have together is are you as a leader and are you as an educator taking the time to pull away takeaways and to find silver linings in what we are doing? And so for me, the quote that I say all the time to new principals that I work with or new superintendents is, it's really, really difficult to learn how to swim when you're just trying not to drown. And so as we are thinking about what we're doing right now, are we trying not to drown, or are we thinking about how we can capitalize on what we're doing to create long-lasting change that is necessary in school? So again, and I'm not sure why I didn't see all of those. I saw a portion of those comments, but I did not see all of them. If we could throw in the chat again what you guys are doing in terms of what quick wins and wins you're finding in the moment, and what silver linings you're pulling from trying to do school in a completely new fashion, in the 2020 way, in the pandemic way. I would be really interested to see what you guys put down in terms of the key takeaways and silver linings you're finding in the moment. And as you guys are continuing to put those through, and I'm sure if I cannot see them, that somebody will read them off to me at some point. What I'm going to do in the remainder of the presentation is just to simply articulate to you some of the things that I am finding and that I am thinking about, and encourage you to be cognizant of these things that are happening as well. So my hope, my plea, desperately what I want to see happen as a result of what we're going through right now, is that we understand that our rate of change in school is relatively unacceptable, and that we can do better, and that we have done better, and that I hope that we continue to move that forward that way.
Dr. Caposey, here's some of the responses.
Beautiful.
Heard a lot of schools realizing how tough it is to personalize and how inequitable home learning is. And then another one is the crisis is an opportunity for reflection and positive change. And another one is having multiple and well thought out plans ready to go, so that if we need to pivot and take different action, we're prepared. And then my final comment would also be, actually stepping back and looking at the use of space and the use of time as pivotal levers for how you're going to address this.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wonderful thing. So I think most of those will come up in what I say in the last, 15 minutes here. But if not, then I'd love to open it up for a little bit more discussion if I have about 5 minutes at the end, which is the hope. So what I hope that we are all considering right now is we consider what we've learned about the pace of change. We start to think about how geography doesn't need to limit access to high quality instruction. I think the entire model of public schooling needs to be really critically thinking through how we can best serve all kids as opposed to our kids within our district. I know it's just a paradigm shift that I think is massively necessary, and I think that can be done at the macro level, but I think it also can be done between district and school to school within individual districts. And then to get to the concept that was just discussed with space and time, I think all of that hinges largely on what is essential. So what is, not only what is the purpose of school, but what is it that we do within the school day that is necessary for us to be successful and to carry out our vision and mission, as opposed to what has become traditional and what has become a baked in process or protocol that may not be driving us toward our goals long term. So I think that we all should be very cognizant of the fact that the vast majority of school districts, and this is non-scientific number, but I would say very easily 95% plus of public school districts in our country, if we would have told them in August of 2019 that by May of 2020, they'd be running a fully remote instructional model in which kids still had access, most kids still had access to high quality instruction, they would have told you there's no way we can make that type of change within the time necessary. And in fact, we didn't just do it from August 2019 to May 2020. We did it from March 2020 to May 2020. So if anything, I think we should be very cognizant of the speed of which we change. The reason for this, there's multitude of reasons for this, but I would just encourage us to think of this. Does society change at a linear rate, or is society and the world around us changing at this exponential, this fascinatingly fast rate? And while I believe schools are doing a better job literally than they've ever done before in changing, the issue is that we change at this linear rate where we are, to use the words of Heifetz and Linsky, we are making technical changes, where we are doing the next most logical switch. We are not doing these large-scale adaptive changes. So as society continues to change at this rapid rate, and schools are changing and changing as quickly as maybe they've ever have in history, we are still not keeping up with society. And so when we look at ourselves and we're wondering, how do we continue to stay relevant? How do we create the citizens of tomorrow that we want? How do we create citizens that not only perpetuate our democracy, but are skilled enough that they can question our democracy and make us better, that we're not preparing kids for what we think tomorrow is, preparing kids for their tomorrow? What can we do in that regard? How can we create that cycle of change? And the big takeaway that I've taken from this whole thing is that we have just significantly underestimated our own capacity to handle change. So this is Kotter's change model. And it has really withstood the test of time in terms of both research and practical application, both in the business setting and in the educational institutional setting. So I just share this with you because I think it's important for us to remember that, like, change is a process. But when you look at items number 7 and 8 in this change, this change process, this change model, that is where I'm really concerned about right now, because what I am concerned about now is a slingshot or boomerang effect. And what I mean by that is what I think I'm feeling. And so that's, again, as non-quantitative as possible, because it's a think and a feeling something. But what I think that I am feeling when I'm meeting with your teachers and my teachers is that there is this massive desire to return back to normal, right? Like we are, to use a scientific term, like the body wants to seek homeostasis. I believe our ecosystem of school is looking to return to homeostasis as quickly as possible. And my fear is in that desire to get back to normal, that we are not going to systematically take advantage of the changes we've made and build on them to make them part of our own. And so as leaders, as educators consuming content, as educators looking to develop themselves both professionally and personally, to me, this is our biggest challenge when I'm looking forward 6 months, right? Like opening school and operating school in a pandemic is hard. And I know that's where most people's focus is at this point. But at some point, it's going to have to go from just opening and operating to driving change and becoming better at what we're doing to serve kids. And then it's about the evolution. It's about shedding what is no longer necessary for us to be successful, and adapting and creating new skills in order to be successful in a new environment. Because quite frankly, the change that we're instituting in rapid scale right now probably was necessary a decade ago. We just hadn't gone through the change process, and we didn't have a concrete sense of urgency in order to initiate the change that we should have been doing anyway as leaders. The next thing that I hope that we consider, and I hope we're thoughtful about, is how and why we let geography limit access. I'll say this again, and then I'll say it in a different way that people tend to resonate with or rebel against mentally at first, which is fine. If you hate what I say, that's good, because at least you're gonna have to think about it. why do we, knowing everything we know now, allow zip code to determine the quality of education? And let me explain it this way. If two kids right now are born 60 miles apart, their educational experience is going to be fundamentally different from each other. And it's not just 60 miles apart. The same holds true. Sometimes it's 6 miles apart. And in our urban centers, sometimes 6 miles down the road. I like to use the example as an Illinoisan to talk about Chicago. Within Chicago, there's Walter Payton High School, which is one of the top high schools in the entire world. Quite literally, one of the top high schools in the entire world. Within 3 miles of Walter Payton, there's a school that graduates less than 60% of its kids. So when we are looking at that level of educational inequity, and we are looking at fundamentally different educational experiences for our kids, and let's not kid ourselves, our students that come from worse socioeconomic backgrounds very rarely have a better educational experience based on zip code than their more affluent counterparts. I think we have to look ourselves in the mirror and say, what are we doing holistically as educators? And if we are honest with ourselves, what we should have learned from the pandemic is that geography in and of itself need not limit access to high quality education. The problem standing between not allowing geography to limit access to high quality instruction is humility in the sense of cooperation. Meaning this, am I humble enough as a leader to tell my board and my community that, you know what, our advanced physics program isn't as good as our neighbors, and we can do a better job serving our kids by being cooperative with them as opposed to trying to build our own program? Do I have enough humility to do that? And do I have enough sense of cooperation to try to accept in other kids that we could serve that are no additional burden to the district? Because I know sometimes there are, but if in the cases where there's no additional burden to the school or district, without trying to make it a revenue generating proposition. And right now, the vast majority of instances where this could occur are not. And so as a result, what we're doing is taking care of our kids instead of taking care of all kids. And the last thing that I want to leave you with today is what is essential in terms of us to be doing teaching programming. So this is a massive question, right? So the question will bear itself out in a handful of years, because quite certainly kids are not getting the same breadth of information in the remote or hybrid setting that they have in the past. And I don't know that many schools are going to be moving from remote or hybrid anytime soon. So for those schools that could have kids with over a calendar year in remote or hybrid space, then what are we doing with the content wasn't covered? What are we doing with the standards that weren't covered? How do we know that what we are doing and covering is absolutely essential? What have we found out about doing digital or hybrid instruction that what used to take us 45 minutes in a classroom can now be captured in 12 minutes of a flipped video? What are we doing to determine what those essential things are? And then how are we pivoting based on what we've learned to make our classrooms and our schools a more impactful, student-centered place, as opposed to one that is more content-centered and teacher-driven? And so this is a massive shift that we could be considering. But when we look at everything through the lens which we have for years in education as this is how we do it, why should we change? If we can flip that, and I think again in this midst of this crisis, we have the opportunity to flip it to say what is absolutely essential for us to do on behalf of kids, and then let's build around it the other things that we think would amplify the experience. I think we have the opportunity to create a school that looks fundamentally different than it has in the past. And I think in that fundamentally different school that we have the opportunity to better serve kids. Okay, that was my 25 minutes of ranting at you. This is my contact information, and I think we have 2 or 3 minutes for questions, which is what my intent was. If anyone has any questions or follow-up comments to continue the dialogue.
All right, so this was awesome. I love the introspection of all of that, and I'm watching for raised hands, everybody, or questions. Anybody that's on the line, if you want to raise your hand or unmute on your side. I'm unmuting everyone on my side. If I hear background noise, I might have to mute somebody, but Chris O'Neill, you can unmute yourself. I'm double checking that you have mic.
Well, I was just going to say, I love your information, and even though I'm not in a K-12 district directly anymore, I was learning at this point, October, normally in a school year, we'd all be sort of settled. So I was just curious at this point now, late October, as of today, what are your teachers' biggest concerns or biggest questions?
So for me personally, today is the day we bring everybody back. So right now their concerns are how the heck is this going to work? So we started hybrid and we brought back our K-5 kids today, and we bring back our 6-12 kids in full in 2 weeks. So the issue, I'm glad you asked the question, because I think that different districts are in different places right now. So those that started remote and are staying remote, at this point, they should be settled in. And to me, what I'm encouraging those leaders that I support to do is, like, we need to start getting better at doing remote and quit fussing about just being remote. And for those that are hybrid right now, if we've been doing it for 7, 8, 9 weeks, now, like, this is the reality. Like, I don't see massive shifts happening in the, scope of the educational ecosystem in the next 6 months. So we have to start getting better at this. The problem is districts like mine, and then districts that started remote that are moving to hybrid now, they're in the midst of change again, like in significant, massive, fundamental shifts. So I think a lot of teachers are back into survival mode. They're back down on the Maslow triangle. They're not able to be moving towards self-actualization. And if we can't get to upper level Maslow's, it's really hard to get them creatively thinking through upper level Bloom. So I think right now, with the shift that's happening in many districts, we're back in survival mode as opposed to working to thrive within the situation.
Victor, I think you're unmuted if you want to ask a question.
Thanks, Dr. Caposey. This is Victor from Scribble. I, first of all, love, as a former debate geek, that you just spoke about Maslow's hierarchy. That's fantastic. But one of the topics that you discussed near the end there about the geography and the zip codes is something that I've always felt very personally passionate about. And my question to you about that is that isn't that sort of fundamentally tied at some level to the way that we finance public education, because the difference in the zip codes, relies in many cases very heavily based on, local taxes and the way that schools are financed. And isn't that sort of a more fundamental foundational issue that requires really significant change beyond just, what we might do as educators or folks supporting educators?
So I would say absolutely and no at the same time. So I'd say absolutely it is a macro level issue that is rooted in different states do different things different ways that either amplify the socioeconomic differences where our affluent kids get potentially at least a more expensive education, if not a better education. However, I think there are things we can do at the local level. So for us, we partner with the University of Illinois. We have high quality, like very high quality streaming equipment in each of our high school classrooms. And so we invested in that to support us during the pandemic. But what this now allows us to do is we can stream to anywhere in the world to provide access to our teachers that might be teaching something that's not available in a smaller, more rural environment other places. The example I give all the time is, like, one of our AP US history teacher literally, wrote portions of the book for AP US history that's approved by College Board. So now we are able to provide access to him to the world. And as we continue to develop and amplify our skills in this regard, then it's just the question of local districts cooperating with each other. So if random district in downstate Illinois wants access to my teacher, am I going to say yes, because it's not going to be an additional burden on the district, it's not going to cost us anything additional, and we're going to do this because it's in the best interest of all kids? Or am I going to say tuition in our district is $11,000, so for one class in our district, that'd be, $1,800, thank you. And so I think there are decisions that local districts can make that would fundamentally shift how this works. It's just a matter of they're willing to be, first, our district's willing to be humble and ask, and second, then our district's willing to be cooperative, or they're going to be revenue seeking.
Thank you for that. Okay, so we're going to move on, but thank Dr. Caposey so much for his amazing presentation and discussion. This was really great.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Scholastic Literacy Pro is a blended reading solution for grades K through 6 that provides educators a single tool to monitor student reading activity, comprehension, and progress. With 3 built-in assessments evaluating students' reading readiness, reading level, and comprehension, Literacy Pro provides real-time data and robust reports to help inform instruction in a meaningful way.
Welcome to Literacy Pro. First, you'll identify lowercase letters.
For emerging readers, the Scholastic Reading Readiness Assessment determines mastery of foundational skills. It informs teachers about their early learners' reading abilities across alphabet recognition, phonemic awareness, syllabication, blending, and decoding. The results from Scholastic Reading Readiness will help teachers determine which students may need additional support in selecting independent reading books. For students who have already mastered foundational reading, Literacy Pro includes the Scholastic Reading Measure, which provides a valid and reliable lexile measure. In this adaptive assessment, students are asked to read passages and answer text-based multiple choice questions that show comprehension. Teachers can assign the Scholastic Reading Measure multiple times a year to monitor progress. At the end of the reading measure, students see their lexile, and educators can see a roll-up of all their students' lexiles as well as their growth over time. Literacy Pro also allows teachers to track both guided reading and lexile levels for every student, supporting either instructional approach. Teachers can always use the data provided to confer with students and communicate with families about their child's progress. The final assessment in Literacy Pro are Think More comprehension checks. Think Mores are text-based quizzes that students complete after they read any ebook or the thousands of paperback books that have connections within Literacy Pro. Think Mores for Spanish language books are available in Spanish as well. During a Think More quiz, students are encouraged to return to the text for evidence. They can view their answers and misconceptions immediately and choose to retake the quiz with a different set of questions. Think Mores provide valuable insight into whether students are comprehending what they read and provide detailed data on 10 higher order thinking skills. Teachers can view every single question the student answered along with their misconceptions. Scholastic Literacy Pro's assessments were designed with the student in mind, while providing educators essential, authentic data to better inform their daily instruction.